Hey, Erica, and welcome to Voice Notes from the Organized Homeschool podcast. We're so excited to have you on the podcast chatting together via voice notes. I'd love to start by you just telling me more about you, about your homeschool. How is it set up? How many children do you have? A little bit about your background. Let's start there.
Hey, Erica, thank you so much. This is so fun. I love this voice notes concept. Very cool. And yes, I am like a voice memo girly, so this is right up my alley. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Erica. I homeschooled my 6 kids for 24 years, and now they're all grown up. The last of the bunch graduated in 2021. I'm a homeschool veteran, and I still talk about homeschooling and encourage homeschoolers. I make homeschool content on TikTok. I work with homeschool brands and content creators in my social media agency. And I run the TikTok Homeschool Conference on TikTok, obviously. I started homeschooling way back in the 1900s when my oldest child was going into kindergarten. We were just happy as clams together, and he did not want to go to school and I didn't want to send him. There was no reason to break up our happy little party, so we didn't. And he stayed home. The family kept growing, and it's actually a bit of a winding road how it went. I homeschooled until the point at which my 4th, 5th, and 6th babies were born inside of years, and the wheels were really coming off for me. At that point, I put the 3 older kids in school for a year, and that was a really big learning experience for me about the value of looking at different options for homeschooling and deciding year by year what each child needs and where they would be best served. And so for the most part, we went back to homeschooling, but not everybody and not every year. It's a bit of a winding road. Putting the 3 big kids in school when I had 3 babies allowed me to get a little bit of a reprieve. Not that it was easy having 3 babies, but I could rest assured that the older kids were getting their schooling, and I didn't have the pressure of trying to do both. After a little while, one of those 3 kids came home, and then 2 of those 3 kids came home, and then 3 of them came home. It was a learning process. I'm really thankful for it because I think my experiences have helped me to have a very realistic, moderate, and compassionate view of the option that is homeschooling, while also recognizing that it's not always the right answer for every circumstance.
Okay, this is amazing. 6 children all graduated from homeschooling at least part of their career with you. Huge congratulations. I have so many questions because I'm like, just tell me how. I want to make sure that if that's what my children and our family chooses to do, like I can be that successful and have them graduate if that's where we choose. So I want to start there because I think sometimes when we start something and something so important as homeschooling, we feel like we have to be perfect or stick with it. We get really stuck with decisions we made about this is our homeschool, this is how it's going to homeschool. How did you make that decision to send the 3 oldest kids to school? What did that look like in the moment, if you can think back to that time of life? Because I'm sure there are people that are like, even if it's a decision to homeschool, like making that leap change for their family. So I love to hear how you got there.
I think that is such a great question. And this was one of the pivotal times in my development of my philosophy about home education. When I started homeschooling, it was the late 90s. At the time when I had my 6th baby, that was 2003. So that would have been the first year that out of absolute desperation, I put my older 3 kids into school. My 4th baby was a high-risk pregnancy. I had been on bed rest. He was born 3 months prematurely. We went through a lot of medical trauma. Then I had a surprise, rapid succession next baby, and then another baby. I was really struggling and could not do a good job for the school age kids, the babies, or myself. I did not have the information that I have now about my health and how my health and hormones were affected by back-to-back pregnancies. Things were just a mess. And I will tell you, through that whole experience, the amount of desperation I was feeling brought up for me how much fear was holding me in a paradigm that was proving to be unhealthy. I realized with the homeschooling in particular that there had been a lot of messages that I had absorbed that made me feel fearful of ever putting my kids in public school. So getting to the point where I just knew that I wasn't able to do well for my kids and that it had been a while. You know, I mean, sometimes you've got morning sickness or something and it's going to be a few months that are rocky and you can be in survival mode for a bit. But we had been struggling for a couple of years at that point. I knew I was not able to do the job of the home education nor nurturing my babies the way that I wanted to. And so then realizing, like, I guess they need to go to school, but also I realized I was so afraid. What a beautiful and important experience it was for me to confront that and to start to get facts instead of just being in the grip of fear. I made an appointment with the elementary school principal and I took a list of questions of all these things that I had heard that might be terrible things that were going on and asked, do you teach this? And what about that? And how do you handle this? What I found was an incredibly warm and reasonable environment for my children. From there, I was able to meet the teachers that they could be with the next year, and they were also great, very welcoming and encouraging and interested in our homeschool experiences. It really made me feel so much better, but also it was very humbling to realize I have been kind of duped into thinking that it had to be homeschooling or else something bad was going to happen. So that was really, really informative and very important. And then, you know, once my kids did go to school, my youngest of the three was in desperate need of speech therapy services, which he received, and that was great. My oldest one went into 5th grade. He got to do cool stuff like they raised trout from eggs in their classroom. And he had this absolutely lovely, lovely teacher. And they got to go to Colonial Williamsburg for their class trip at the end of the year. These were some experiences that really drove home for me that there are gifts to be had here as well. These are different opportunities than I could have given him at home. We were never going to grow trout from eggs at our house, and we would not have tried to go to Colonial Williamsburg as a family, but he got to do that, and that was great. Now, I will also balance this by saying not all the experiences for my kids in public school were positive. My daughter, who went into 1st grade that year, ended up begging to come home mid-year, and I let her. I was a little better off by then. These two kids I'm talking about, they're 29 and 32. It's been a long time. I realized every educational opportunity has its gifts and challenges. And so I shifted from only thinking about homeschooling to then feeling more like each year, each child, I'm going to evaluate what we need to do, what this child is needing, and where they will be best served. And so that's how we went forward for the rest of their growing up and their education. My second child, my daughter, ended up choosing to go into public school partway through 8th grade, and she stayed in public school and graduated from public school. She had very specific reasons why homeschooling did not feel like a fit for her and why she wanted to go to public school. And I think that's totally fine. And this is something that I talk about quite a bit on TikTok. I feel very strongly that teenagers need to have agency and buy-in for their educational path. I just can't stress enough how valuable I think that is. All 5 of my other children chose to complete school at home. I think this perspective isn't talked about enough in homeschooling, because you're right. So many people do kind of get on a thing where they're like, we homeschool, rah, rah, forever and ever, amen. I don't think that's realistic nor healthy. I've seen a lot of good women paint themselves into a corner, dogmatic and magical thinking about the importance of homeschooling. And the truth is, it's a long stretch to homeschool a child K through 12. And then if you've got multiple children, you're tacking on more and more years. So in my case, that was 24 years from when the oldest entered kindergarten to when the youngest graduated from high school. A lot will change. There's a lot you don't know. There's a lot of life that's coming at you. And it's just so important to feel that you're making your educational decisions in a level-headed, heart-centered way, and in a way that acknowledges that you don't know what you don't know. We can only do the best in as each circumstance presents itself to us. Does that make sense? I really want people to know, as they think about homeschooling, that this doesn't have to be a forever decision. At the outset, their child is 4, and they're saying, well, what about accreditation, and how will I teach them calculus? It's like, you haven't even taught them how to read yet. We're way far away. It can be the decision that makes sense right now. You see how it goes. And from there, it's improv. You are going to constantly be needing to pay attention to what's working, what's not working, what needs to change. We keep pivoting and dancing. And just when you think you've got it figured out, you've got a system that works, something's going to change. There's going to be a new developmental stage, or a new kid gets older or comes along and needs something different. So I think we just really need to be kinder and more realistic with ourselves, and just saying, we like what we're doing. It feels good. We're always free to make a different choice if that's what we need.
Okay, so absolutely 100% to everything. And especially that last point. I have been a business coach before, and I've coached teachers, and I've started my own business. So many times I'm talking to women and people in general. You're an ever changing person. You have the right to change your mind, and you should give yourself grace through those changes and decisions. Don't be so hard on yourself. I am someone who stayed in situations, specifically professional situations, longer than I probably should have. I did not want to quit. I had created this identity of like, I'm going to be a principal. I really want to be a school leader. And I was in that role, and it just wasn't working for me. And I felt like I had to hold on to that identity. I didn't quit, but I didn't want to leave the children. I didn't want to disappoint families or disappoint staff. I share that because I have now learned a lot from that, and I have grown a lot in that when something's not working for me, whether it be homeschooling or even like a lesson with my son, we quit. We stop, we come back to it, we're ready, or we make a change. I love what you're saying so much. I appreciate you sharing the background, what was going on with your children, pregnancy and delivery. I appreciate you being open and honest with that. I didn't experience what you experienced, but I think we all in some way have some form of, having children, the emotions and the hormones that come with it. I can empathize with what you're going through with 3 young children and 3 older children. I truly applaud you for making a tough decision and moving through your fear and taking action. That's so huge. Like you said, I had these fears about public school, and let me take some form of action was scheduling that meeting to determine, are these fears real, and to help you work through them. Because so many times just taking action through a fear is what helps you through that fear, right? So that's just so good. I heard you say one of the things that we do as homeschoolers on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis is look at what's working, what's not working, and make adjustments and pivot. And because we're working with humans, right? Our children are humans and we're humans. And we're all always changing. They're always changing. Our children get new developmental stages happening. They come up with new interests. They have new likes, dislikes, things they want to do or don't want to do. So I'm curious to know, what does it look like, or what did it look like for you day to day, to look at what's working, what's not working? Did you have a structured system, or how did you do that?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, I did develop a structured system for this. I will tell you the short version. So number one, it starts with a note on your phone. As you move through your school year, things concerning you, things seem like they're not working, you're getting a niggling about, I don't know if the science curriculum is right for us, whatever. Put it in the notes. You don't need to decide everything today. Let's say we've got people that are going to be going into the new school year in August or September. You're very excited and you get going. Great. And then within some relatively short period of time, you're going to start to have life hit. Either the kids don't like the curriculum, or you're not feeling good about it, or the schedule isn't working quite right. Number one, make sure that your expectations are realistic. Number two, make sure that you've prepared yourself by reading all the teacher helps or preparatory information in all of your curriculum so that you understand how it's designed, what is there for you, how it's meant to be implemented. A lot of times people skip this part and then they're like, I don't know, we hate it. But you didn't even spend an hour to familiarize yourself with these materials. And a lot of times the materials are actually designed so well and there's resources within it. But if you haven't taken the time to familiarize yourself, you're not getting the most out of it. So that's the first thing, is make sure that you've covered all your bases. You've taken advantage of whatever trainings maybe are on the website for the curriculum you purchased, or anything that's included, so you know that you're able to implement it the way that it was meant to go. And then you've got to tweak those schedules, let yourselves fall into a rhythm and figure out what works for you. Typically what happens is once we get into January and February, this is where people really get into the crisis point. It starts to feel like maybe you're not sure if homeschooling is working. Maybe you should put the kids back in school. It's a combination of the winter blues, especially if you live someplace where it's, darker, where it's cold, things like that. Everything feels worse. Plus the shine has come off of all of those materials. And now you're just like, will it ever end? And what are we doing? So I tell people, make no big decisions about your homeschool in January and February. Know that this is coming. I do have advice for how to prepare for it, but then just hold on tight and use that note on your phone to write down all your fears, all your observations, any doubts you have about things that you think maybe you don't want to use this curriculum next year. Put it in the note so you can refer back to it, but to the best of your ability, keep going. I'm not saying you can never ditch a curriculum that's not working for you, but it's very normal to feel a certain sense of despair or fatalism about stuff in January and February. Be gentle with yourself, but keep going. By the time spring rolls around, a lot of those January and February fears are resolving. You often see that worries that you had about maybe your child didn't seem like they were understanding the reading program or whatever, something wasn't coming along. Often by spring, April, May, it is resolving. So give it time. Once your school year has completed, take some organized time to purposefully evaluate what worked, what didn't work, what were your highs, what things fell short and why. Do the best that you can to identify what's working for you. And this isn't just a quick 15-minute thing. This is a series where you're thinking about your experience, where you're going to tune into each of your children's experience from your perspective. And if they're old enough, ask them their perspective. If you have a spouse that's willing to participate, get their perspective. What are they seeing that seems really good? What have they heard you say over and over again wasn't doing so well? Getting all the stakeholders, getting their perspective is really, really powerful. And then you just take some time to sit with that. You're going to look at those notes you took and figure out, which of those concerns are still concerns, which of those concerns have resolved. And yeah, you're just going to take some time. I almost without exception do not want to see people buying curriculum for next year when it's still March, April, May. Give it some time. Think about what's been happening and where you need to go. When you put yourself in this position of empowerment, it is so good. Now that, something was hard, but you got through it, what helped you get through it? What were the traits? What were the tactics that you used? If there's a curriculum where you're just like, this does not feel like it gave us the result we were looking for, or it wasn't useful or user-friendly for your family, great. Now you know that, and now you know specifically why you want to remediate that piece of your homeschool. I'll give you one example. For years, we used a whole curriculum that included language arts, literature, and a bunch of stuff, and there was also a built-in science program with it. So I just took the whole bundle and did it. As it turned out, after we did one particular year of it, I was like, I hate this science. So guess what? I don't need to throw out the whole thing. Now I just know I need a different science, and I knew specifically what we didn't like about it and what I was looking for instead. So not that the next one is guaranteed to be a win, but with that empowering information, you're just going to have a much better sense of what you're needing. And especially nowadays, there's so many options. It is just information overload to see all the things that are out there. And so I think it's really important to take the time to identify exactly what you need and just go hunting for that. Once you find a thing that seems like that, I used to say, don't look to the left, don't look to the right, just look ahead. You bought a thing, you got a thing. Love the thing. Do not get caught up in, another science curriculum. Well, maybe this one. Well, she says she likes it. That's great. Every single curriculum that's out there, there's people that love it and there's people that hate it. It doesn't mean anything that somebody else loves it necessarily. It might or it might not be right for you. And so the more empowered you can become in understanding where you're at and what you need, what worked and what didn't work, that's going to allow you to go forward. And so then you're setting yourself up as best you can for better success in the coming school year. And then the cycle repeats where you continue to take those notes, make those observations, and make the adjustments in an empowered and informed and clear-minded way.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. This was so good. I love the tactical note on your phone piece because we're in a world where there's so much going on. I can't remember what happened 10 minutes ago. So if I don't have somewhere to put it down, it's gone. It's most likely gone forever, right? Set that up and just always put things there so you can go back and reference it. And I love this cycle of annual reflection. I would encourage people to reflect on a monthly basis. I do a short reflection every week, just on adjustments, but every month, even sitting down to look at what happened this past month. How do I feel about this? Because even if I'm not making big curriculum changes every month, there's something I might want to bring into our homeschool, stop doing or start doing. I definitely encourage having one place where you can write it down so then you can be reflective and also reflect as often as it feels good for your homeschool. I also totally agree with this whole thing of once you've made a decision, go forth with it. There are shiny objects everywhere, from online to books to TV. You're going to see someone who is really good at promoting what they're doing, and it's going to be like, ooh, this could fix all my problems I'm having right now. But guess what? Everything comes with a challenge. Everything's going to come with things that you're going to have to adjust and improve on. So the longer you stick with something, there's better opportunity to improve it. Now, I'm not saying never change, of course, but once you made a decision, go with it and make sure you've done your due diligence to be ready to implement it as well. So then you can see if even after implementing it well, you need to change. I want to shift gears because I know there's a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of homeschooling moms who even asking me specifically about recommendations for older kids. And they feel like there's so much out there for toddlers and elementary school, but there's not as much out there for older kids. And you have that experience. So, of course, I have a 1-year-old and I have a 5-year-old, so I don't have that experience homeschooling yet. I'd love to dig into a little bit about older kids and how you give them agency and stay organized with the requirements for graduation and making sure that they were meeting the mark on content areas that were maybe like more challenging. Because, you know, even with younger kids, teaching someone how to read is definitely a skill and you have to plan and get good at that. But there's definitely older kids with the content. Like, not everyone knows calculus. How did you keep up with the demands of high school and stay organized? And how did you encourage your kids to have the agency that they did? You know, your daughter decided that she didn't want to graduate from homeschooling. So, how did you empower them to take ownership of their learning? I just know there's so many older folks who have children and want to homeschool them, and they could learn from what you have accomplished with your kids.
Okay, I'm going to start by talking about how you support your child's agency. I believe that it's really important for parents to understand we are on a continuum in our parenting journey that starts at birth, where we have the most control over the decisions that are made for our baby. As we go along, we should be moving toward more and more coaching, coming alongside, and earning influence with our child by the time they're adults. All you really have is the possibility of earned influence and voluntary connection with your child. If you haven't earned it, they're not going to be letting you in on those big decisions. One mistake that I often see people make with teenagers is they start to panic and then try to take more and more control over their teenagers instead of loosening up the reins and empowering their child to have more input and make more decisions for their life. This is done with wisdom and knowledge of who your child is and what they're dealing with. Even when they're around 10, 11, 12 years old, these are people that have opinions about their life. The last thing I wanted is for my kids to feel that they were stuck or trapped in a particular situation. So really, I mean, for us, I think once we made that change where the kids did go to school that 1 year, it was up for discussion. And we had some more back and forth besides just that year. And I don't know if I can even remember how all of them went, but I can just tell you that as I got more and more into that practice of evaluating, I would talk to my kids and check in. How are you feeling about this? And, you know, we had times, for instance, one of my children was severely dyslexic, and he expressed an interest in going into middle school. So I was like, okay, tell me more about that. What are you wanting out of middle school? What are we lacking here? So we had that conversation, and I had a real concern for him about if he goes into school, what kind of supports are going to be there for his dyslexia. And I actually called the head of special ed for the school district, which is someone that I had a previous relationship with because I'd had my little one in speech and we had utilized other services. And I checked with her. So I said, he's, I don't know if it was 7th or 8th grade or whatever. I just talked to her about it. Here's what it is. What's this going to look like? Can we go into school with these sorts of accommodations that I do for him at home? When I found out what the situation was going to be, my child was going to have to be drowning academically all the way through Christmas before they would put any sort of helps into place. There's a certain amount of time the child has to try to do the regular thing. Once that's established, then you set up a meeting, but that could take 30 days for the meeting to happen. And then it can take a further 30 days for implementation of those changes. But then on top of that, the changes they were going to make weren't going to be the kind of changes he was benefiting from at home. So when I had all that information, I was able to say to my son, okay, so here's what's going to happen. How do you feel about that? He was like, that sounds terrible. That's not going to work for me. He thought about all the ways that we were adapting our homeschool to his needs so that he could be thriving academically at home. Ultimately, he decided he would rather stay at home. And we made the changes that we could to the other things he was wanting socially to round out his experience. So that's a great example of taking his needs seriously. I'm getting information and presenting him with, here's what I found out. What do you want to do? If he had said to me, I really want to try it, I think I can do it, we probably would have put him in school and seen how it went. The point is, it was his choice. And then you have a kid who has buy-in. This would have been so different if I had just said, absolutely not. We're a homeschool family. You can't go. Now you've got a kid who's feeling ripped off, feeling like he can't have something he was attracted to. It's a bad precedent and doesn't nurture the kind of trust and camaraderie in the relationship with your child that you want. So to me, this is just part and parcel of the relationships that we want in our families. It's respect, it's listening, it's care, it's flexibility, and truly wanting the best for people, and also trusting that as our kids get older, they have a real sense of what feels right to them, and being willing to trust them with that. In the case of my daughter, who went into public school partway through 8th grade, that was really interesting. That might be one of the key turning points where I realized how important the need for active evaluation was. Look back and think about exactly what was happening, because there was one year where we had multiple family crises happening over a period of months. And what happened was that just put me into autopilot with homeschooling, and I forgot to think about the evaluation side of things. And then we got into the school year and kind of realized, oh, I didn't even stop to think about if this is the best thing for this kid. But in my daughter's case, she had a reasonable list of reasons why she did not feel the homeschooling was working for her. She said she was thinking that she would like to do high school in public school. At this point, it was October of her 8th grade year. When I got information about it, I found out what it would look like to enter public school as an 8th grader, which was basically taking a couple of placement tests and just walking right in. If we wanted her to go in high school, in our district, it was going to be more complicated. And I wanted her to have an easier time getting that high school experience. And so we decided, let's go in 8th grade and let you have that continuity. And, that worked for her. It's not like every day of public school, my daughter was saying, this was the best thing ever. There was a lot of times where, of course, like any other teenager, she would say, this sucks. And there were times she seemed really frustrated about things that weren't so great at school, things that were disappointing academically. And a couple times I said to her, you can always come back and homeschool if you want to. So it works the other way too, where it's like, just because you put yourself into a different school setting doesn't mean the door is closed if you choose to come back. In fact, there were a couple times where she did do a little fact finding about opportunities that we had now for her to come back and homeschool. And she ended up deciding she was going to stay with what she was doing. One of the jokes in her house is she used to say, school sucks, but homeschool sucks more, which I think is hilarious. It's not that she hated homeschooling for everybody. She's extremely supportive of homeschooling for her younger siblings, but just for what she wanted, she felt like she was going to take the good with the bad and see it through, and that's the path she wanted. Here I had a child that knew that she had options, that she could get information, and that we would enthusiastically support whatever she decided. When you have a kid that's invested in their own path, they're going to do better socially, they're going to do better academically. She graduated with honors. She got to be in marching band for many years. She made friends. Was every part of it great? No. Just like every part of being home would not have been great. It's fine. She chose her path, and she's satisfied with her path, and we're proud of her. So now I'll talk about the kind of organization side of things. So I had the 6 kids. My oldest child was 3.5 years older than the next kid. It kind of feels like I had almost 2 different homeschool experiences within those 24 years. When my oldest child got to be high school age, the younger kids were taking a tremendous amount of my energy and attention, as you can imagine. But my oldest child was a very typical learner and a very independent learner, an avid reader. We used a literature-based curriculum that he loved, and we used a math program that did the teaching and grading for him. So really, he didn't need a lot from me, and he was very happy with that. And he had other things going on in his life as well. He was in a band, and he, had a job, and he had a, active social life and stuff. So even though he did graduate from our homeschool, it didn't feel as much hands-on with him as it did with the rest. So we had the oldest one that did his own thing and completed his stuff and graduated and zoomed on with life and was doing great. My second child chose to go into public school. Then I have this group of 4 boys within 5 years of each other. With them, I mostly did homeschool as a group. So like all the science we did together, all the history, the literature, those sorts of classes we did together. They had their individualized math level, obviously, and then, they were working at whatever level they were at for their expectations, for their writing, their language arts, that kind of stuff. So it was a great simplifier. When we did biology, we all did biology. And when we read through Story of the Worlds, we sat around together, read it, and discussed it. So it was nice that we had these 4 kids and mom doing a lot of this stuff together. I was a very, very hands-on, actively involved, actively teaching, coaching, mentoring, almost all the entire way through high school. The reason being, of those 4 kids, 2 were dyslexic, 1 had attention issues, and any time that I tried to outsource or make them more independent, I saw that we really lost a lot of ground. Things were just not getting done the way they should. I wasn't able to keep a pulse on their progress as well. So while I know a lot of people get their kids into high school and they're like, I don't even have to do anything, that was never the case for me, with the exception of my very last kid, which I can tell you about later. I mean, we were hard at it with me actively involved in school stuff with them every day until 3:30, 4 o'clock. Because, they slept in a little bit in the morning. But anyways, it is a great simplifier when you have kids that are close in age and you can group them together. This worked for us because all 4 of those kids knew that they wanted to be homeschooled. That one that considered going into public school and middle school was the only one. The rest of them were like, life is good. We love it here. They knew how good they had it to be able to sleep in and have snacks and things like that. My youngest child developed type 1 diabetes when he was 12, and we found that homeschooling was incredibly important because he had so much difficulty through the nights with his blood sugar. So a lot of times he needed extra rest during the day. The compassionate flexibility that homeschooling provided was so important for him. So none of those kids were going to do anything else. It literally did not matter if everybody was doing biology this year and chemistry next year, because we didn't have to fit into any other options. To answer your question about things like graduation requirements, transcripts, things like that, the one thing that was a win for us for outsourcing was math. If you can plug in with a math program that your kids like, that does the teaching and the grading and the record keeping for you, that is gold. It is very time consuming to teach math, and you can't necessarily group it like history. It is going to be very individualized, what levels they're at depending on their age and just their aptitude. So being able to take that off your plate is huge. I felt very confident about the math program that we used, that my kids were getting an excellent math education. That was good. As far as graduation requirements, I'm just going to be straight with you. A lot of what I did was kind of like reverse planning on this. I knew what I wanted my kids to do. Basically, I just looked at what are the credits that we would need to be getting if they were in public school. Printed that out, had it. So I know, it's this many science credits, this many math credits, what it would look like. So that's what we were shooting for, yes. But did I perfectly keep up on the transcript recording and stuff throughout their high school? Not so much. Once I had to produce one of those transcripts, I did do better. But some of the kids, once they needed a transcript for applying to college, I had to go back through my memory and records and be like, what year did we do biology? And what was that, program and stuff like that. We did it, but I had to kind of like think back to document it. What I recommend to people now is just keep a list. Again, can be on your phone, can be on your computer, where you're just keeping track. It's just 9th through 12th grade that you need transcripts for. Nobody cares what they did in 8th grade or before, but 9th through 12th grade, just keep track of what they did and the grades. Now, grading is interesting because if you are a homeschooler like I was, a lot of what we did wasn't the sort of thing where there was like a worksheet where you were going to find out you got a 95. It was like we read a book, we discussed the book, and maybe we watched a documentary that went with it. So I knew that the learning was happening in a meaningful way because of the quality of conversations and ongoing connections that we would make between current events or other things that we would learn about and read. But I didn't always have solid number grading available. So one thing that you could do is learn about making a rubric and having levels that your child is aware of, where they know in order to receive an A, these are the things they're going to have to do. And a B is going to look like this. Or, if you're doing the number scale that most people do, figure out what do they need to do to earn that grade. Also, figure out the different courses that you're doing, what amount of credits does that equal? So, something like a full Algebra 1, that's going to be a full math credit. But maybe if they're in community theater, like some of my kids were, that might be a half credit or a quarter credit. So this is something I think is easiest for people to Google to learn about rubrics, about grading scales, about how to assign credits. And also I recommend that people look up a free homeschool transcript template and then just work with that. That's all that I did. And that is what I have used for my kids to get into college. I want to say one more thing about agency and respecting your kids. So now, the only child of mine who did go straight into college was my daughter, who graduated from public school and went into a private four-year college. And after one semester, she was done and she left. It has been so expensive. She might still be paying off her loan from that one semester of school. But more importantly, she knew that if this wasn't a fit for her, she didn't have to do it. She wasn't stuck and had our support and was able to choose a different path. And this is instructive of being a parent of teenagers and young adults. As a parent, I can make my own best recommendation based on my life experiences, but I always know that my kids might make a choice that wasn't my best recommendation. And I'm going to have to be okay with that. And the truth is, my way and my life experience is not the only possible good way to handle a thing. It's just the way that I know and that I'm comfortable with, but they're not me. My kids are all very different from each other, and they've all made different, unique decisions and had different types of experiences in life. Being able to just be in a space of, I am here to be a support and a resource for you, but also I trust you to make good decisions for yourself. And I trust you that if you make a decision that you need to course correct on, you can do that too. This is a lesson you will learn again and again as your kids are adults. So get comfy, start practicing that on the lower risk decisions, because it only gets more intense and higher stakes as they get older. One more unique nugget about us with high school. That is, one of my children in particular was really struggling with his mental health, and he was just like, what is the fastest path for me to be done with high school? He knew that he did not want to go to college. He did not feel up to like the rigors of being like, you've got to get all these credits. And so I was like, well, I understand, we can look into a GED. And so I ended up getting a GED prep book for all 4 of the boys plus myself. We ended up doing GED prep as part of our school for the last year that particular child was in school, and he did get the GED. So for some of the regular things that I would have expected him to do for a diploma, he just did not feel like he had the capacity for it. Because I understood what was going on, I let it go that way. He got a GED, and that's fine. Mental health issues are something that people tend to not talk about. I did ask my son if it was okay for me to share that, and he said yes. As kids get older, we really have to respect their privacy. Because of that, people have teenagers that are struggling, but they don't feel like they can talk about it. If you're a parent of a child struggling with their mental health, you may feel isolated and unsure what to do. It's important to know that homeschooling can be a really compassionate and reasonable option for a kid who is just not going to buzz through checking all the boxes for a traditional high school diploma. When you're fighting for your child's mental health and well-being, there are bigger fish to fry than whether or not they did chemistry. Enjoy your freedom, care for your kids, and if that means you prioritize mental health over academics, so be it.
I literally just got goosebumps listening to the last part of your voice note. And thank you for sharing. And please send your son my thanks on behalf of everyone who's listening. So many people are going to get value out of what you just shared and be able to resonate with what you just shared, which is going to be able to help them help their children. I just so appreciate that and appreciate you both being willing to share, because it's so real. I think about why I started homeschooling. The big headliner banner is freedom, right? And freedom to prioritize my child's well-being over their academics, freedom to spend our time how we want to, freedom to explore our interests and go in directions that my child or children want to. And you just demonstrated so much freedom in what you shared, how the different paths that your children have gone down, and as they've grown from kindergarten all the way through high school and now into adulthood. And I think not only is it just such a great experience to share and know so many people, this is ideal for me. I've learned so much, but I think it's a huge shout out to you for having the bravery to allow your children to follow their path, because I know, at least this has been true for me in some situations, like when you're first starting off, there's this idea of control. As parents, it's a big responsibility to parent, and then we take on also educating our children. So now we've added on this layer of responsibility that makes it feel like control is what's going to make it work, right? Sometimes, though, as you've demonstrated, it's the release of the control that's going to make it work. That can be hard for us because there's so much riding on this decision, the day-to-day responsibility of making sure that not only are your children well with their mental health, their physical health, but are also layering on their academics. I'm just so grateful for all that you've been sharing with us and with me. I've been forgetting to say that you've been cracking me up on these voice notes when you mentioned I started homeschooling back in the 1900s. How are the 1900s? Sounds so far away. And then how your daughter was saying high school sucks, but homeschooling sucks more. It's just hilarious. I love that she felt like she could bring her opinion to the table about that. So many gems have been dropped and so much tactical, real tips, tools, and advice that you've been sharing. I'm so grateful. And I know that everyone who's listening to this will be grateful as well. And I hope that they share it far and wide because I know that there's people who definitely need to hear this. I do want to give you space to talk about what you're currently doing because your kids are all grown up and you have grandchildren. How do you support homeschooling moms and parents? I want to talk about your TikTok conference because I'm excited. I'm going to be in my first TikTok conference in July with you. Feel free to share anything we didn't get before you share all of the pieces around what you have going on and how you support homeschooling families. Feel free to share anything that I didn't ask you about or you didn't get to tell me and you wanted to share. If there's anything else you want to tell me and anyone listening, we'll get into the rest.
Oh, goodness. Is there anything I want to tell you? Gosh, there's just so much stuff. And I really appreciate this format. I'm thinking to myself as I've been having this conversation, why don't I see more of these things on TikTok? I guess it's because it's the bouncing off of somebody else that's really helping me. I do much better with this than like just thinking in a vacuum of like, what might somebody want to know? So thank you for providing this. I feel like an overarching that has helped me through a lot of different stages of homeschooling is that your greatest allegiance is to your children and their well-being and obviously your family at large. So not homeschooling, not a particular homeschool philosophy or co-op or curriculum. Always keep that guiding light that your greatest allegiance is to your kids and you are free to do whatever is best for them. That to me is kind of the overarching principle that covers a lot. In addition to all the years that I was homeschooling, I also had an online business. I had actually more than one, but the most recent one that I had was for 13 years. I started enrichmentstudies.com, which had art and music appreciation products and programs. I sold it last fall. You know, entrepreneurial space while also homeschooling and homeschooling so intensively as I was, I would dream of the day when I was done homeschooling. I actually had a list for the last several years of homeschooling. I'd come up with some big idea and then I would think like, this is not something I can take on right now, but this is something to put on the list for after the kids are done with school. The amount of physical energy and attention and mental labor load that went into homeschooling for 24 years was so immense. I remember thinking, when I am done with this homeschool responsibility, I am going to leap tall buildings in a single bound. I really thought I was going to bust through that last kid's graduation and be like, here I go. I'm going to do all the things that I couldn't do for all these years. And instead, we had 2020 when the pandemic started, and I graduated kids number 4 and 5. The next year, 2021, graduated kid number 6. What I had not anticipated was all the grieving I would actually do, knowing that we were coming to the end of an era. I'm going to make myself cry. Those final 4 guys, that was such a special time to have all those years with them. Our family went through a lot of change during that time as well. There was just a lot of really important support and care, plus all the things that we were learning. We were also part of history, which is important to remember when you think about art and music and literature that you're reading, is that it's a product of its time. And so too was our homeschool. Like, we homeschooled through the start of Black Lives Matter, and we talked so much about our privilege in society and our responsibility to society, and we saw all this unrest and tragedy, and we did studies about injustices. I don't know, like, we delved into, so it was deep work and good work about these young men. And then we went through the pandemic, and somewhere in there my marriage also ended, and so our family did that as well. And so when we were coming to the end of our time together, it was really hard. You know, even though you're excited to see them grow up and you're glad to have less stuff to do, but yeah, so much more grieving than I expected. And then when it was done, I don't know, probably just a combination of the fact that I was exhausted from nearly 30 years of parenting and 24 years of homeschooling and just over functioning in general. But I'll tell you what, I got that last kid done with homeschooling and I was exhausted, like 2 naps a day. I feared that I was never going to come out of it. I was so tired. I was still running my business barely. I crashed out for a while. And by a while, I mean probably like the better part of a year. Thank goodness that I had my business and that it was established well enough, you know, that I was okay. I don't know what I would have done if I needed to actually go to a job or something. I was just exhausted and had no energy for all those big things. But I took the time, and eventually I healed. There were also things in there like perimenopause, and eventually I got on hormone replacement, and I think that helped tremendously. This is all just a mix and match of who knows what you can really blame or attribute success for, but the whole combination, I came through it, but it was a lot different than I thought it would be. Thank goodness, since then, I'm feeling a lot better and a lot more energy. I started making how to homeschool content on TikTok in 2021 when there were families coming into homeschooling through the pandemic. I guess I have to homeschool now. What does that look like? Somebody help me. And they didn't know about any of the traditional ways of getting into homeschooling. They didn't know what resources were there. And I saw that nobody with any significant homeschool experience was helping them. So I decided to be the one to do it and found such a wonderful homeschool community on TikTok. I love TikTok so much. I could go on and on about why it is the very best social media platform. And it's been really fun now to have the continuity of having been participating with the homeschool community on TikTok for now 4 years, to see people who were, you know, like little baby homeschoolers then that have now, you know, gotten several years under their belts and are really confident and growing and everything. And it's just really fun to see. Now, at some point along the way, I got a little bit like questioning how I could really help homeschoolers. I see all these bright young homeschool moms with their curriculum and their cute kids making their videos, and I would think, I don't really know what I have exactly to share that homeschool moms want, because I'm not actively homeschooling and I don't know what the latest cool curriculum is, and I'm not on the bandwagon for the current buzzword must-have concept for your homeschool. For a while I floundered where I was like, I don't know, I feel like I've already said everything I have to say about homeschooling on TikTok. And so like I did a bunch of TikTok shop stuff and was just kind of in a holding pattern. Then early in 2025, right after the inauguration, there was a lot of talk about the Department of Education being dismantled, school funding going away, and changes coming for education. And I thought to myself, oh man, we're about to see another 2020, 2021 kind of thing where people are going to be feeling displaced and forced into homeschooling. And they're going to need information. It's going to be another wave of people looking at homeschooling as an option they hadn't previously considered. So I thought we could organize an event for the homeschool community on TikTok, amplifying homeschool voices, sharing perspectives, and putting the beacon out. If there's people thinking about it, they can get information, find content creators, and hopefully connect with people that resonate with them. And that's where the idea for the TikTok Homeschool Conference started. We had the first one in February. It was huge. I think we had almost 80 different workshops that happened. There were, 55 or 60 or 70 different content creators that participated. It was great. Such a beautiful time. We realized we could do a lot of good here. This is really fun, and we could be more organized, and we could continue to share in a more powerful and cohesive community way about different aspects of homeschooling. And so ever since then, we've had one TikTok homeschool conference a month, except May we had two, and that was a little bit too much. So we're just going to do one a month, I think. Now we've had conferences where we've learned about different educational philosophies. We've done curriculum show and tells, all sorts of different things, and more to come. For July, we are doing another curriculum show and tell where people are going to be sharing the materials they'll be using for the coming school year. August, we're going to be doing everything related to organizing the homeschool life. I don't just mean organizing your homeschool, but I'm talking chores, meals, all the things. Everything, all the tools that we have, organizing everything that goes into the homeschool life, we want to have done. And we've got lots more coming beyond that. It has been really fun for me to hit upon this because I realized this is the spot where I feel like I've been able to plug back into the homeschool community in a way that makes sense for me. I'm not actively homeschooling children, so I have the time to do this organization, and I also have the expertise on the businessy side where I've been able to set up an email newsletter so people are getting a clickable schedule each time. I've got an assistant that can help with it. I'm able to now use my gifts, resources, and know-how to support homeschooling from this side of it. So it's sort of like a big sister role. I love it that now there's a place where I can help amplify a wonderful diversity of homeschool voices and hopefully reach a diversity of other homeschool people or people who are just considering homeschool and feel less alone. In my TikTok journey, I started seeing how important it was for homeschool businesses in particular to be represented on TikTok. When I first started making content on TikTok, I don't know if there were any homeschool businesses on there. Certainly none that were doing a good job. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys got to get over there. And because of all my years in the homeschool business world, in the curriculum world, I had a lot of contacts. And there were a couple companies that stood out to me as a good fit for TikTok. And so I started reaching out and just saying, you guys need to get over here. Do you want help? And so a couple of them did want help. And I made content for brands so that they could be on TikTok and be relevant, get the word out. Then over time, this kind of expanded to where different homeschool brands were wanting help reaching the TikTok homeschool community. I eventually developed a social media agency where I connect homeschool brands, homeschool content creators for the purpose of, helping reach the TikTok homeschool community with their products and services. I started this in December of 2023. So 2024 was my first full year. So now I'm halfway through my second year. I love this so much. This feels like such a delightful, full circle part of my life right now. All these years that I homeschooled, I had a business online. I was in community with other homeschool businesses, publishers, etc., and then all the work that I put in to learn and understand and fall in love with TikTok, all of that converged to me being in a unique position where I had the trifecta of expertise to help these companies. And literally there's nobody else. At least I don't know of anybody else. I'm pretty sure I'm the only person. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, come over here and I can help you. It's been so fun to see that all these different work experiences that I've had have now converged to this very exciting and delightful new business venture. Because I was a homeschool mom trying to make it on a single income, but always having a side hustle, a little business, I started having an online business when my youngest child was nursing at the keyboard. I'd have that kid on the boob while I was typing away on the computer, setting up my website, fulfilling orders, writing blog posts, and everything else. You know, my kids, like their whole life, they remember me doing some sort of side hustle or business. And so when I think about the snail's pace at which I moved for 20 plus years on my businesses, but I kept moving forward, and how hard I worked to try to make an extra a couple $100 a month or money that I could save for us to visit our parents or pay our property taxes or help out with Christmas. I was over functioning, but working so hard for so little money, creating products, programs, and services. Now I'm helping homeschool content creators make really good money making videos about curriculum they know and love. It is the joy of my life. Sometimes I cry. I'm so happy. I have had content creators who have been able to pay for important medical things, meet financial goals, have been able to replace outside income, that have been able to save significantly for their future. It feels amazing to be able to provide a service and a structure that's helping homeschool moms earn money. This is growing and it's so exciting because I know that the TikTok homeschool audience wants and needs this information. I know that the companies need this help and their marketing strategies of the past aren't working as well. They need to get with the times, and this is so helpful to them. It's the perfect fit for me and I love it so much. It feels really exciting and positive to be helping so many people with something that matters. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Other than my happy business ventures, years back when my kids were in high school, my marriage ended. Much to my surprise, I ended up finding love again and got married last fall. I've got all 6 of my kids grown up now. I'm expecting grandbabies 6 and 7 this year, just within the next couple of months. I've got homeschooled grandchildren. I've got little grands around that I take to summer reading program activities and stuff. And it's fun to see them grow up and see who else comes into the family. I'll tell you what, I didn't love the act of home education every minute, but I did love the time with my kids. It was the absolute gift of a lifetime, and I'm just so happy that I was able to do it. And I'm really thankful for the quality of relationships that my kids and I have and that they have with each other. I think a lot of that has to do with just the sheer amount of time and shared experiences and memories that we got to have.
Thank you so much for all of this. I love your story and everything you've shared. We have a lot of similarities, especially when you were sharing about the business piece and the nursing of the keyboard neck. I have never heard that acronym, but that's me every day and was me with my first and now is me with my second. Always had an entrepreneurial spirit and have always been trying to figure out business for myself. Currently, I have a project management freelance business, and I have 2 clients because homeschool. So I cannot take more than 2, and have, thought about, should I do an agency? Should I do coaching for project management? And ultimately have decided I want to dive into this homeschooling piece as a business of some form as well, because I love education. I went to college and went right into education afterwards. And I didn't leave education because I didn't like teaching children, right? So and have decided to homeschool partly because I love teaching children. And I'm so grateful to be able to teach my children. And, to your point, I am just so obsessed with the time I get to spend with them. So I'm definitely with you on this. Business as always. And thank you for sharing more about the social media business where you connect with folks with brands. We might have to continue this conversation after we end this part of the conversation because I'd love to hear more. Thank you again. I am so grateful for you taking the time to share your experiences. This is my first full conversation where we're wrapping it up. I have a couple more going on, but I'm really appreciative of the feedback of this format kind of works because I get to go back and forth with someone and process thoughts and ideas. Unless you're live with folks on social media, if you're doing a video by yourself, you're just talking and there's not anyone to talk back to you in real time. So I appreciate that feedback. I will put in the show notes your TikTok contact information as well as links for your TikTok homeschool conference. Definitely tune in. July and August are great topics to get ready for the school year. I'm just so appreciative, and I think we might have to do a round 2 talking about balancing business and homeschooling because we didn't get to really talk about how they organize it together. Be on the lookout for me messaging you hey, Erica, you want to chat again? My voice notes app is always open and I'm excited to stay in contact. Thank you so much again.
Hey, I really enjoyed this and feel like you've got my creative juices flowing with stuff I could talk about on TikTok. I'm actually having a super busy and successful time with business, so it was fun to kind of take a break and talk to you, but also to get to talk a little bit about what's going on. And yes, absolutely, if you're interested in learning more about working with me as a content creator, I would love that. And yes, definitely the whole thing of working while homeschooling and having a business, that was a whole other thing I didn't even get into. But yes, I've had some form of a business for the past 22 years. For about 8 years, I actually had a job that took me out of the house some of the time as well. So I've done it all. And the other thing I didn't even get into, which we're not going to, but I've actually homeschooled 3 other children that weren't even my kids at different times. It was a whole other 2 different other adventures. But yes, definitely talking about the business side and stuff, that's something we could talk about. Although it's really hard and I have mixed feelings about it, but I guess that's the authenticity. But anyways, thank you so much. I look forward to hearing this when you've got it all edited and being able to tell people about it. And I've just enjoyed getting to chat with you. Yay. Yay for girls named Eric.